Hi, and welcome back to Inspiration Station here on Entrepreneur.com. I'm Kirsten Kloss. Thanks very much for watching. So today on our show, I'd like to introduce Seymour Segnit. We're talking about telecommunications equipment and the idea of crowdfunding. And Seymour, first of all, he raised over $650,000 on Indiegogo to create thingCHARGER, a mobile device charger that blends into a home's traditional outlet to change any mobile device without unsightly wires. Well, very intriguing product. Well, thanks very much, first of all, for joining us on the show today.
Well, thank you.
So how did you come up with the idea for thingCHARGER, and why'd you create it?
So the idea came about, most of us have had the experience of kind of being around the house and something that you're using is unsatisfactory in some way, and you go, well, wouldn't it be great if there was a something rather? Most of us have had that experience. And I was trying to solve the problem that many of us have these days, you know, multiple devices, all needing charging. I think most families have the experience of kind of fighting with their spouse or their children, because I need the charger right now, and you've got it, and so on. And I was trying to solve the problem for us, and I kept on buying these things and didn't really like any of them. And one day I was using one of them, and I just thought, well, if only that was there, and that was there, and it had another thing on the front, and if only. And I said that to my wife, and she said, okay, you need to shut up and go into the basement and don't come out until you have a prototype. So I do what she says, and I emerged a few hours later I basically took a drill and some glue to this product I didn't like and modified it and came up with the very first prototype of thingCHARGER.
Huh. And how did you choose to use crowdfunding to fund a creation of this product, the thingCHARGER?
You know what, I think it was because the order was like this. I wasn't sure how to, first of all, I've had many experiences in my life where I've kind of, you know, tried to, I was involved in a startup once in Silicon Valley, and you know, we raised lots of money through venture capital, but my goodness, it was exhausting. And I knew that this wasn't a kind of venture capital type of product because the costs of hardware are so high. But every time I showed it to someone, we put together a little film right at the beginning, like a 30-second demo, and people would just be like, "Oh my God, that's fantastic! You know, can I get one now?" This real energy in there. You know, if you've been an entrepreneur for a while, you know when people go, "Yeah, good luck with that," and "Oh my goodness!" And this was an "Oh my goodness" product. So I thought, well, if we could just get it in front of people, I think. You know, people are saying that they would like to give us money for it, and of course, you know, the crowdfunding has been going through the roof in the last couple of years. A lot of publicity around it. You know, at about the same time as we came up with the idea, and I was like, listen, if we can't raise any money through crowdfunding, then this thing's no good anyway. And if we can, we're up and running. So let's go.
Mm. Well, but Seymour, did you already know that this could turn into a business, or were you quite surprised at how quickly it grew?
Well, yes and no. I mean, from the beginning, because of this kind of like, oh my goodness reaction people were giving, I had a strong sense that it could be a very successful product. There's a difference between a product and a business, and it's actually only more recently that we've started to evolve the product into a line of international products and some things that we're not actually ready to show yet that makes it more of a business than an individual product. But yes, I mean, I knew from the beginning we had something special on our hands. What I didn't know, of course, as no entrepreneur does, is whether we could get it off the starting blocks.
Yeah, and you know, it's so typical in crowdfunding and in any form of fundraising is that it's one thing to put yourself out there on a site, but it's not the field of dreams, is it? You need to spread the word in addition to the page.
Sure.
How did you go about doing that?
Well, we started off with friends and family who were very good to us. We did quite a few thousand. You know, we got out of the gate really well in our first 2 or 3 days, but it was kind of $5,000 on the first day and $3,000 on the second day and $1,000 on the third, and the graph was going in the wrong direction. And it was looking like a bust after about 4 or 5 days. And I just decided, you know what, we knew, looking at the data, you know, looking at the web data, that we were converting the number of people who came to visit the crowdfunding page compared to the number who contributed. The contribution rate was incredibly high, so it was a traffic issue. And I just went out and found 1 or 2 people who specialized in helping get traffic for crowdfundings, and luckily stumbled across, you know, an amazing team who really helped us to do it. And they also specialized in getting the people who'd already contributed to then tell their friends about it. So we started to get some of the crowd telling the crowd effect.
Well, Seymour, have you seen the landscape? I mean, just looking back now, have you seen the landscape of entrepreneurship change over the years? And what advantages to today's entrepreneurs, what do they have today that they didn't have in the past?
Oh my goodness! Well, I mean, I've been because no one would ever want to hire me. I've kind of been an accidental entrepreneur my whole life, with with varying measures of success. So I've seen I've got 20, 25, 30 years, and it's changed kind of immeasurably. I mean, I remember at one point trying to get in touch with a bunch of radio stations and sitting there with someone lent me an electronic typewriter, and it was kind of amazing that the typewriter could memorize an entire letter, and all I had to do was type the person's name at the beginning. And this was unthinkably amazing at the time. And now, of course, it's like, it's like that's the most basics sort of function. And if you don't have it for your Gmail, then just download Yesware, and it'll include it for free. So that, but I think crowdfunding is particularly exciting for entrepreneurs because whilst it's not automatic money in the bank, it's a really exceptional new possibility. I mean, I saw an interview recently. I was lucky enough earlier this year to actually meet Richard Branson, who's arguably one of the not arguably, who is one of the world's greatest entrepreneurs. He recently invested in Indiegogo, one of the crowdfunding platforms, actually the one that we used. And I saw an interview with him saying, I would have got money for, if when I'd been launching, I would have used Indiegogo and platforms like that to fund my businesses. I mean, he rightly, I think, believes that it's an exceptional new frontier for entrepreneurs. And some people, myself included, believe that this will be the way that small businesses get started. A significant minority, if not the majority, of businesses will get off the ground using crowdfunding in the years ahead.
But there must have been challenges. Maybe you can share with our audience what your biggest challenges were in bringing an idea and a product to market.
I think overcoming our own inertia, my own inertia was one of them, because when you're very first getting started and you don't know what you're doing, you're kind of, I mean, I guess if you've done this before, you know to ring, who to call for this, and who to call for that. But this wasn't something that I'd even touched before. I've never done a product in my life before. No idea how to get it made. No idea how to do a crowdfunding. I mean, we have my wife is a graphic designer. I have some amount of communication skills, so we had some ability to put the presentation of the product together. But in terms of knowing anything else, and so I think kind of keeping going when it's kind of like you're not just standing in front of Mount Everest naked with no supplies. You're kind of standing in front of Everest with the full knowledge that once you get to the peak, there's going to be another Everest sort of waiting for you on the other side of it, and you just have to sort of believe and keep going. I think that's that's probably the single greatest feature of great entrepreneurs is they just keep going. And I've fallen short plenty of times in the past, but I think, I mean, you interview plenty of entrepreneurs. Isn't that a common theme, that it's kind of when it seems impossible? Our campaign seemed impossible after 4 or 5 days. I mean, I thought it was over, and it was financially it would have been very challenging for us personally if it had not succeeded. And I was just like, to hell with it, we're going to make it work.
Well, it's the unknown too, and you find yourself struggling, but there's also the fear element, the worry that you could lose it all through that whole process. How do you overcome that?
It's funny because I still have a business that actually helps people to overcome fears and phobias. It's called CTRN.com, and it's funny because as so often it's so much easier to teach other people about these things than it is to do it for yourself. But I think the most important thing is to notice when it's fear, because very often we kind of we're sort of putting things off and this, that, and the other, and if you can stop and be honest with yourself and go, you know what, it's not that I'm not ready to call John who could help me. I'm actually a little bit fearful of calling John. And if you just make what we call a state change, where you just decide, instead of being like this and fearful of calling John or whatever it is, I'm just going to go, I'm going to kind of roll my shoulders back and breathe deeply, and I'm going to say, I'm calling John. And you just, it's a state, it's a change of frame, and anybody can do it. Change your breathing, and literally change your physiology. Kind of lift up your chin, roll your shoulders back, and immediately you start to feel different. You've never seen a fearful person who's looking like this, and you've never seen a confident person who looks like this.
Got it. Well, and okay, I'm going to dig into this because you're obviously you're quite passionate about this side of it. Let's look at another idea. The idea of handling questions. Let's say someone asks you a question, you're not quite sure how to answer it. How do you approach that idea of fudging it? That some people call it that, but I don't know what the term is in your.
Explain to us. I have no idea how to answer this. So I guess jumping in with honesty and humor is probably helpful. But I think that again it comes back to state, because I truly believe that when we're in the right state, in a sort of calm, appropriately confident state, the answers will come naturally to you. And when one is sort of fearful and uptight, that's when folks get stuck. Mm-hmm. And you're a great interviewer. You helped me as your guest to feel relaxed immediately in the few minutes before we came on air. So you helped me to get into that state. And you asked me a question just now about how do you handle it when you've got no idea the answer to the question, and I had no idea the answer to the question, but it sort of came out, and I think that's the right answer.
Well, and you don't realize it, but this is hard talk. I'm going to get into the hard questions next. No, anyways, get on to the next one. I'm going to lighten this up a little bit, but let's just look at another angle of it. How about the idea of adding people to your company? Like, you're growing a business, right? What was the tipping point when you realized in your business that you needed to add people and start working on your business, not necessarily in your business? Maybe elaborate a little bit on that one.
That's a great question, and actually for me that's a tougher question than you said let's lighten it up, and then you go and throw, because for me that's a more difficult question than most folks. I mean, I have my own skill set is I have on a good day I have some decent communication skills. I'm good at presenting things. I'm a great ideas guy. Sort of execution is tougher, and I haven't. Even at my advanced age, I haven't spent a lot of my career kind of working with teams and managing teams. So I actually find that very difficult. I find it very difficult to assess people's abilities and managing them, even when they have good abilities. Like the business of setting timetables and deadlines, I find very tough. And just looking at the folks who've helped us with thingCHARGER, it's amazing how it's like the best people who've been involved have been like, how did we get so lucky? This is unbelievable that we have someone of that skill and that dedication and that creativity and that humor and that heart, and they're involved with our little project. And at the other extreme, it's like, really? I wrote you a check for that amount of money, and you have the gall to deliver so little? I mean, it's actually astonishing to me, and I don't really have the formula. But to come back, I mean, I wish I did. But to come back to what we do know is you cannot do everything yourself. And I think what we have to do, I mean, in the case of this project, let me give you a good example. We quickly realized that we had a phenomenal product on our hands, and that that hardware, which is what it is, making physical products, hardware is called hardware because it's hard. It's really hard. This is actually a 3D printed model. So here it is. It doesn't actually look like a lot. If folks are interested, thingCHARGER.com for entrepreneurs, whether or not you're interested in our product, we're incredibly proud of the first minute of the film that's showing there is we believe a really, really outstanding piece of communication. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned there, including what happens in the first 10 seconds where we're very good at kind of hooking into people's minds and getting them to understand what we're talking about. But this is a piece of hardware. It looks like an electrical outlet, plugs into the wall. So essentially, I think you said at the beginning, it kind of still looks like an outlet, but you get to put your phone right on top, and it'll charge like that. So it's a piece of hardware, and to have something like this made, first of all, you have to go overseas, because for something of this price point, we can make cars or $5,000 Macintoshes in this country, but we don't have an infrastructure that allows for making something like this at an economical price. So all of a sudden, we're looking to China or Taiwan or whatever to have something like this made, and it's another world over there. kind of culturally, and the process of managing hardware is extraordinary for new people. One example, I mean, this to this day, this blows me away. But to make this thing, right, you can imagine you need to have a mold made that makes this outside shell. And this is, I mean, if you think of all the products you have in your home, this is a pretty simple thing. So the mold to make thingCHARGER is we're just about to start cutting it after a few months of development. It's going to take about 3 months to make the mold.
Wow.
3 months to make the mold, and $30,000. And the thing that's going to be made will be kind of the size of a washing machine and weigh as much as your car. The mold, just this thing that can stamp out the plastic. And this is extraordinary to me. And I can't, by the way, I can't get anybody. And we're now working with, I'm going to loop back to answer the question in a second, but we're working with an amazing licensee that's going to manufacture it for us and handle a lot of the distribution. Right. But they've been doing this 25 years, and they can't tell us why it takes three months to make a mold. It just does. It's a very specialized thing. It's done extremely slowly and extremely carefully. And for some reason, today, everything else has speeded up, and it still takes a long time to make a mold. But to come back to the answer to the question, you have to go with your own strength. So whether it's building a team or whether it's choosing who to partner with, just do the things that you can do. Clearly we've got a great idea here. Clearly we're decent at presenting it, or our campaign wouldn't have done so well. But I don't know how to run advertising, web advertising at a profitable rate. So we have an amazing, we work with a company called Agency 2.0 who do that for us. And the guy who runs it is a genius. He's got an amazing team, and they help us to drive traffic. We are not experienced in manufacturing hardware on the other side of the world with all of the implications to do with safety. This is something that's going to be plugged into people's houses. Yeah. Right. I mean, this is serious. This isn't like this isn't a little plastic fork or something. This is going to be plugged into people's houses 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So they're incredibly important issues. Yeah, and it needs to be
rock solid. Rock solid.
Yeah, it has to be beyond rock solid, absolutely. So so understand what you're good at and work with specialists. I know that isn't news exactly, and I'm sure many entrepreneurs will have heard this many times before. Many guests will have answered that question in that way. But my goodness, it is important, because people who are good at what they do deliver orders of magnitude better than people who don't know what they're doing.
I guess it's just trial and error. You just have to pick and choose and just go with it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to some sense, you have to just trust and get on with it. I'm sure a recruiting specialist would tell you otherwise, but I think you've got to look for the best people, but you can't stop for certainly if you're an entrepreneur, you can't wait for a year to get some drawings made of your project. I mean, you've got to be getting on with it now. If you're Apple, with all of the resources they have, I'm thinking of retail, right? They recently, after a year's gap, they hired their new head of their retail operation, but they already had great retail people in place. It wasn't like retail came to a standstill. But for us, when we were doing this, we needed a 3D artist, and we actually, tip for entrepreneurs here, we went on Fiverr.com. Fiverr, where you can get the starting price for projects is $5. And we, when we wanted 3D pictures of our product done, we went on there and we gave, because it's only $5, so we asked 3 different artists to do it. And all 3 of them, no, I think one of them never came back with anything. One of them came back a week later, but one of them came back the next day with some excellent work. So we gave him some more, and within a few weeks, he'd become like a core team member for us.
That's fantastic. Well, those are actually really good tips, especially a guerrilla method in order to get out there and get started. So you were talking about team or partners that you're working with as far as the syndication. You have all this customer service to deal with. You mentioned before the show something like 9,000 customers. And they're all excited about the product. How do you handle all of that customer service? Is that outsourced, or do you do that yourself?
Well, no, it isn't. We do it ourselves. Our team does it. It's still very much a kind of a family affair. My own daughter works in contributor service, as we call it, because we actually don't have any customers yet. We have beloved supporters and contributors to whom we are going to gift product when it comes off production line. So my own daughter Nina works on it. We also have a wonderful lady, Ashley, who's actually the niece of someone who isn't a blood relative of mine, but to whom I'm pretty much joined at the hip and works on our web stuff and is a beloved member of our family. So it's kind of a family affair, and that is tough, because what we find is that the contributors fall into most folks are just fantastic. They've made a contribution. They're trusting us to get on with it, and it takes longer than anyone would wish, but we really are working on it very hard. And there's this tiny minority of people who are kind of internet. I think the word that's grown up is haters, right? They just want to kind of to pick and to criticize, and that's very difficult, because in a sense people have a right to. I mean, it's a free country, but it's very tough, because we really are doing this, and we're a tiny team working passionately and hard to do something, and that's something that entrepreneurs, with all of the benefits of today and the internet and social media and so on, but that's something that entrepreneurs didn't have to handle, 20 or 25 years ago, was this sort of, how extraordinarily kind of vocal and sort of thoughtless some folks can be in public. We see the way celebrities are often kind of pilloried. I mean, you only have to, and you don't have to go very far to see it. You can read any article on any news site and look at the comments below, and within 3 comments, it's degenerated into this really? Did did anybody teach you how to speak and how to behave? Are you really like that? It's really quite sort of bizarre, and I find that I find that one of the more challenging things to deal with, because I think we're good people. We haven't made any major mistakes, maybe, other than just thinking we could do it a little quicker than we're doing it.
Well, and reputation is very important, obviously, especially when you're in your crowdfunding platform. And I interviewed Dr. Diermeyer, who wrote Reputation Rules, a book about reputation. I think he works for the FBI and all kinds of different people. You're right on as far as that's concerned. You want to be specifically addressing all of those issues. But let's just kind of summarize here, and maybe give our audience kind of a high level. First of all, what were you most proud of? And had you to roll it back to the beginning, when you're at the early stages, let's say pre-launch, what piece of advice could you, if you could be the advisor to yourself, what would you do?
Well, I think the thing that the single, apart from the product itself, I think the single thing, I know the single thing I'm most proud of is and I mentioned it earlier, the 60-second film that we made. It's the clearest and best piece of communication that I've ever made and have ever been involved with. And the reason I'm so proud of it is that, and I kind of didn't know, I worked really hard on it. I mean, it has about 100, it's 60 seconds long. It has 100 words, I think, or 110 words. And I spent a week writing the words really carefully and going back and changing, literally syllable by syllable. I was concerned with the rhythm of the words. I was concerned with the way the communication was building. But even so, I didn't know kind of how good it was until we got there. But what it does is that it sort of stacks one on top of another. And when we watch people watching the film, they go, "Oh, that's good. Wow. Oh my goodness. That's."
Well, now I'm in bated breath. I have to check this video out. What are the challenges? What's something that you would recommend to yourself to do differently had you been at the beginning?
Well, I think I would have. I think I would have worked harder sooner on getting folks to share. We did actually start the program with a sharing program in place, but we didn't put it front enough and center enough. So I'll give you an example. In the extended version of the video, I've been talking about the first minute, but it then goes on for a couple of minutes where you get us telling our story a little bit. And in the extended version of the video, we say to the camera, whether or not you choose to contribute to our, campaign, please tell your friends on Facebook and Twitter. So we ask for the share. The next time around, we will be much more specific about, click the button below to share right now. If you want to, if you'd like to get a free one, then click this button and we'll tell you how. We'll be much more, not in an aggressive way, but we'll make it much easier for people to kind of to find their way to doing that, because that's, I mean, you can advertise anything, but advertising is expensive and hard. But word of mouth is so helpful, and people do love what we're doing. and they are happy to share it. So we just need to make it as easy as possible to do that.
Well, Seymour, when's the product coming out? What's the official first product that generates revenue?
So it's the end of the year. It might creep over into early next year, which I'll be very sorry, because we have said 2014, and that we would then be breaching that a little bit. The reason I don't have exact timing yet is because we are determined to get this right, because it's going to be in your house for the next 15 or 20 years. Rather than, I will always make that exchange of getting it right for shaving time off. And we're pleased with the last model that we had from the factory. Hopefully we only have one more to go. There'll then be the tooling that I mentioned, which takes 3 months. And then there's this unknown, which is UL certification, because this thing is it's what's called a high voltage device that plugs in your home. It's not a requirement of law, but it is a requirement of all the major retailers, and we would want it anyway. This thing called UL certification, where it goes through a battery of tests. I mean, they basically, when you see the tests for motor cars where they smash it into a wall, it's kind of the electrical equivalent of that. And it goes through this battery of very, very scary tests, and we don't know how long that will take, because they sometimes have a backlog. So that can take several months and can put us behind as well. But I'm hopeful for the end of this year. I'm certainly not promising Christmas. I wish that we could, but I do promise that it will be fantastic when you get your hands on it, and you can folks can be proud of helping to get it off the ground.
So I imagine the product can be, you can still invest in the product. First of all, you got your website, and we'll put the credits here as we close the show off, thingCHARGER.com. How does one get involved in actually investing in this?
So I just want to be clear that at the moment, crowdfunding doesn't allow for investment as such. So it is everyone. I mean, and God bless everyone, but at the moment, folks contribute. Right, so what is happening legally and ethically is folks are looking at what we're doing, liking what we're doing, blessing us with a contribution of some funds, with the promise in return from us that when we're shipping, we will ship them one. An investment, of course, is something distinct and different. Shares are not for sale. There isn't today a mechanism to do that. But if folks would like it, yes, always thingCHARGER.com. We will be having some future campaigns. Both to develop and expand the product, and we're determined that whenever we do, the folks who have supported us previously will always get the kind of they'll always get a little something extra for having been with us there from the beginning. But I see the continued. Some people say, well, you've already crowdfunded. Why would you go back and ask for more? The riskiest thing for small businesses is always the cash position. And we're extremely fortunate in that regard. But I see that every time someone else contributes to the campaign, they make it stronger and reduce the risk. And our risk is minuscule now. We're so far along, fantastic licensee, terrific contributions to date. But when we originally went out asking for $25,000, people say, well, why did you carry on? Well, it was pretty risky at 25. It was a lot less risky at 100. We raised, 650 or a little under 650, and the risk had almost completely gone, unless we completely messed up, which with the licensing deals and so on, we haven't. But I mean, I just see it as being, every time we move forward, we are looking after the people who've already supported us.
Fantastic. Well, Seymour, great having you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We've been speaking with Seymour Segnit. You can check out their website again at thingCHARGER.com. Great invention here on entrepreneur.com. Thanks everyone for watching, and we hope to have you along real soon. Let everyone know about the companies that we have here on entrepreneur.com on Inspiration Station. Share the page with others that are in your network as well. I'm Kirsten Kloss. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you again real soon. Bye for now.